Lazy, good-for-nothings who don't do housework or cook deserves a divorce. I'll demand $80,000 in compensation. Looking down at me lying in bed, Alexander suddenly blurted that out. Just when I thought he had come home, he's talking about divorce. Calling me useless for not doing housework or cooking. And claiming $80,000 in divorce compensation is absurd. Despite the fact that I've fallen ill due to the stress from Alexander. I had reached my limit with Alexander's unbearable treatment. But my body wouldn't move as I wished, and I couldn't even get up. I didn't want to let things go Alexander's way. With that determination, I forced a smile while still lying down. Fine by me. Alexander, not expecting me to agree to the divorce so easily, had a look of shock spread across his face. There's no turning back now. I'll make him regret all the times he's belittled me. My name is Amelia. I work at an IT company and I am turning 38 this year. Most of my work is remote and my days are busy but fulfilling. There are tough times, but it's a rewarding job. My friends from my student days often say, "It's amazing you can work so hard." It felt good to be respected for being so dedicated to my work. 2 years ago, I even started a family. I married my husband, Alexander. I met Alexander 4 years ago at a busy restaurant downtown, out for dinner with friends. As we were leaving the restaurant and walking. "Excuse me." I was approached from behind. I turned to see who it was. The man wore a shirt and a jacket, the epitome of a capable office worker. "You left this at the restaurant," he said, handing over a mobile phone. Which to my surprise was undoubtedly mine. "I'm sorry, thank you so much." "No problem, glad I made it in time. Hey, would you like to go to a pub with me?" Alexander, relieved to have returned the phone, unexpectedly invited me out. Surprised again, I glanced at my friends who were about to part ways. They gave me a go-ahead smile as if saying, "Please go. If you are okay with me, sure." Actually, I had messed up at work that day and still wanted to talk more. My friend had a date with her boyfriend and couldn't stay out late, so Alexander's invitation was perfect timing. After parting with my friend, I went to a nearby pub with Alexander. That was the beginning with my now husband, Alexander. At the pub, we shared work frustrations and quickly hit it off, feeling as comfortable as if we were old friends. When we left, Alexander asked for my contact. And we started seeing each other, leading to marriage 2 years later. It was surprisingly smooth, even astonishing to me. Considering my focus had always been on work, I was lucky to even get married. That's what I thought at the time. "Amelia, get me some beer," asked Alexander, lounging on the sofa and fiddling with his phone in the living room. I sighed yet again. How many times has it been? I've lost count. It's been 2 years since I married Alexander, and I'm nearing my limit with his sloppiness. Alexander, who works at a well-known bank, always boasts about being an elite and claims that people working at the bank are the most important. I had no idea before marrying that he thought so highly of himself. I knew he was proud of his work, but being constantly reminded is exhausting. "I'm tired of getting it for you. I'm busy, get it yourself." I was working and couldn't cater to Alexander's request, so I refused. Then Alexander, scratching the back of his head, said in annoyance, "You call remote work busy? I had all sorts of tasks at the office today and I'm exhausted." He scolded. "Just because it's remote work doesn't mean it's easy." Even when I retorted, he would shoot back at me with sarcasm. "Anyone can say that. You can take breaks whenever you want." I got tired of arguing back and silently stood up from my chair and reluctantly went shopping. Here, I bought the beer. Alexander didn't thank me for shopping, nor did he pay for it, just silently taking the beer. Then he was absorbed in his phone again. This is more like master and servant than husband and wife. Why did Alexander marry me? No, why did I marry Alexander? I sighed. It goes without saying that Alexander left all the household chores to me and did none himself. As a dual-income couple, I once suggested we share the chores. Share the chores? Don't joke. You're always home, Amelia. It's only natural for you to do them. He laughed it off. But I do go to the office sometimes, and I can't always do all the chores. Office visits are rare, right? Hire a housekeeper for those days. Alexander stubbornly refused to do any chores. He belittles my job as easy, rushing me to finish the chores, and yet often seeks physical intimacy at night. However, there's no sign of us having children. If there's a reason, it's probably me. I've heard women in their late 30s have a harder time conceiving. I thought if we couldn't have children, we should enjoy our marriage, but Alexander seemed unhappy. Can't even have kids, what's the point of marriage? He said dismissively, and I was infuriated. He's useless at home himself. I doubt he's really competent at his job. A truly capable person manages personal affairs well and easily handles household chores. I had my doubts about Alexander's work performance. Speaking of doubts, in the past few months, Alexander's return home had been noticeably later than usual. I don't know about the busy season in banking, but when I comment, "You've been busy lately. Unlike you, my job is tough," he would just respond so and nothing else. Suspicion was inevitable when he continued coming home past midnight for months. I naturally suspected infidelity. One night, Alexander came home late as usual and collapsed at the entrance. Approaching him, he seemed too drunk to stand. With his eyes closing, he was about to lose consciousness. Sighing, I moved to unfasten his tie, and then Alexander muttered, "Hold up, Victoria. Come on, just a little longer?" Hearing that sweet, melting tone, I was shocked. "Victoria? Who's that?" Whether it was sleep talk or drunken confusion, Alexander simply fell into a comfortable sleep. Now seriously suspicious, I installed cameras around the house. Next week, I'll be away on a business trip for the weekend. If Alexander is cheating, it's the perfect opportunity to bring his lover home while I'm away. Of course, there's no certainty he'll bring someone home, but it would be evidence if he did. That's why I installed the cameras. A week later, with an oblivious face, I said, "Well then, I'm off on my business trip." To which Alexander waved smiling. "Have a good trip." His face looked too happy, and it angered me. 2 days later, returning from the trip, I immediately checked the camera footage. Sure enough, there was Alexander, bringing his lover home and into our bed. I couldn't watch it all, it made me nauseous, so I stopped midway. But this was clear evidence of infidelity. I clenched my fist, almost crushing the camera. This was unforgivable. There's a limit to how much he can mock me. Did he think this would be forgiven? Once it was certain Alexander was cheating, I was filled with anger and sadness. Afterward, each time Alexander insulted me about the food or the dirty floor, my stress built up. I was contemplating when to tell him about the divorce, but my work suddenly got busier and I lost the right timing. Eventually, overwhelmed by work and household chores, my body couldn't keep up. One day, I suddenly collapsed with a high fever. I took the day off work. Of course, I couldn't do any housework either. Alexander must have known I was unwell from the morning, but he left for work silently and returned home at 6 p.m. Earlier than usual. Then, he came to where I lay sick in bed. The smell of alcohol made me feel nauseous. Without a care for me, Alexander smirked. "Lazy, good-for-nothings who don't do housework or cook deserves a divorce. I'll demand $80,000 in compensation." Looking down at me lying in bed, Alexander suddenly blurted that out. Divorce, out of nowhere? Calling me useless for not doing housework or cooking? And demanding $80,000 in divorce compensation is absurd. I've fallen ill because of the stress from Alexander. I was reaching my limit with his treatment. But my body wouldn't move as I wished, and I couldn't even get up. I didn't want things to go Alexander's way. With that determination, I forced a smile while still lying down. Fine by me. Not expecting me to accept the divorce so easily, Alexander's face showed shock. There's no turning back now. I'll make him regret belittling me all this time. A few days later, when my fever subsided and I was back to normal, I first got the divorce papers. After signing my part, I waited for Alexander to come home. I'm home. That day, Alexander came back at 10 p.m. reeking of alcohol and a perfume I'd never smelled before. I confronted him with the divorce papers as he arrived. Please, let's get divorced. When I said that in a low voice, Alexander laughed mockingly and took the papers. Finally, I can be free. It was unclear if his sarcastic remark was for me or himself, but he smirked disgustingly. If he wanted a divorce so much, he should have prepared the papers himself, but he probably wanted me to bring it up. I was disgusted with his nasty character. I'll claim for compensation in the divorce. Thinking Alexander pathetic for expecting compensation after cheating. I didn't say anything there, just silently watched the divorce proceedings. The next day, I submitted the divorce papers and was finally free from being Alexander's slave. The divorce ended anticlimactically. But just divorcing Alexander wasn't enough to forgive him. I decided to take action for revenge against Alexander. Over several days, I packed my belongings. I was leaving this house. It was a used apartment we bought when we married 2 years ago, but I wasn't attached. So, I decided to leave myself. Don't ever come back. Alexander watched me pack, laughing with glee. He was probably planning to live with his lover in this house once I left. A nauseating thought, but the footage showed Alexander was quite smitten with his lover. Ignoring Alexander's words, I left the house with my belongings. Phew! At least now I'm free from Alexander's abuse. I sighed in relief. I immediately went to a real estate agent and got introduced to a property I could move into right away. It was a bit small, but the rent was cheap and it was a nice women-only apartment. I quickly finalized the contract for the apartment. I'd have to live in a hotel for about a week until I could move in, but that was fine. Afterward, I finished some procedures at the bank and checked into the hotel. All the while, I was plotting my revenge against Alexander. And the plan I came up with gave me goosebumps. That's it. This is the only way. Imagining Alexander's astonished face made me almost laugh. Just watch. Don't think this is the end of the matter. The next day, I immediately set my plan into action. I felt bold for what I did. After finishing the work, I was satisfied. Afterward, life went on peacefully without any incidents. Being single again was so easy, not having to cook or do laundry for Alexander. I regretted not divorcing him sooner. A month later, I got a call in the middle of the night. Woken up by my mobile phone's ringtone, I wondered who it could be at this hour and saw it was Alexander. I ignored it at first, but the calls kept coming. Ignoring it further would only disrupt my sleep. Reluctantly, I answered the call. Hello? I answered sleepily, hearing the sounds of cars and buses in the background. Apparently, he was outside. I waited for Alexander's reply, clearly annoyed at being woken up and subjected to the noise. Amelia, you finally picked up. What is this about? Alexander's yelling voice echoed in my ear. I knew what he was going to say, but acted like I had no clue. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. I got a call from the bank yesterday. They suddenly fired me. I'm on my honeymoon in Italy, and this makes no sense. A honeymoon in Italy. There must be a significant time difference. Hence the call at this hour. Typical of Alexander, not considering my situation. That's tough. Good luck with that, bye. I responded casually, about to hang up. Hey, wait. But Alexander protested loudly, so I sighed and paused before hanging up. I asked why I was fired. They said I caused the bank to lose a client. And guess which company that client was? It was yours, Amelia. Alexander explained the circumstances of his firing, but I had expected this to happen. After all, I was the one who planned it. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. If I was going to get my revenge on Alexander, now was the time. After taking a deep breath, I began to speak. Yes, I know. Because I'm the one who stopped doing business with your bank, Alexander. There was a gasp of surprise on the other end. I could hear the pampered voice of his mistress next to Alexander. Unperturbed, I continued. You might not have known, but it's my company. I'm the CEO. Yes, I'm the CEO. Alexander thought I was just a regular remote worker, but in reality, I'm the boss, just not often on site. I quit my first job right after graduating college and succeeded in starting my own dream company within 3 years, which has been growing for over a decade. The bank where Alexander worked was the one that had provided significant loans to my company. After leaving Alexander, I decided to repay all the money I borrowed from the bank. The sales representative was shocked. They would lose the interest they were supposed to receive. The lump sum repayment must have been an unexpected event for the bank. Could you reconsider your decision? The sales representative asked me in a panic. To that, I placed my demand. There's just one condition. Fire Alexander Grant. I decided to request that. The representative hurriedly brought their supervisor. He was someone I knew from before. What happened all of a sudden? When the senior executive asked me, I decided to tell everything. Actually, Alexander Grant was having an affair with your president's daughter. He mocked me terribly, divorced me without paying any compensation, and now he's about to remarry. I couldn't stand it. The information about Alexander's affair with the president's daughter came from the footage of the hidden camera in the house. The audio was captured too, so I heard all the conversations between Alexander and his mistress. Both the representative and the executive turned pale when they heard my story and seemed to want to continue doing business with my company. Probably, the news reached the president, who must have been furious to learn his daughter was having an affair with a married man. They promised to fire Alexander, so I reconsidered the lump sum repayment. That's why I'm still doing business with the bank where Alexander worked. I knew about Alexander's firing even before he told me over the phone. You're the dishonest one. You made me do all the housework, mocked me, and cheated. And yet you think I'm the bad one? Can't you see things ethically, Alexander? Is that what you call being an elite? Ridiculous. I'll claim for compensation in the divorce. To think you, the cheater, could claim anything is absurd. Also, I changed the ownership of the house loan. I was the one paying it, but now it's your responsibility. I unloaded all the stress I had received onto Alexander over the phone. What? Alexander seemed unable to counter my justified argument. But then, a weaker voice than before came from the other end of the line. Please, forgive me. Spare me the divorce compensation. And the house loan too. Victoria is pregnant. I can't imagine being in debt when the child is born. I've been fired and am at a loss. Please, let me off the hook. Alexander's pathetic apology only made me sigh. I felt stupid for enduring this man for 2 years. Forgive? There's nothing to forgive. I want nothing to do with you, Alexander. The compensation is a settlement. This is all your fault, isn't it? Why should I have to put up with it? I won't talk to you again. You can keep running away in Italy for all I care. Goodbye. Ignoring Alexander's plea to wait, I hung up. He should be grateful I even answered his late-night call. Sighing, I went back to bed. I probably won't talk to Alexander again. I can live my life without any connection to him. Later, after Alexander and his mistress returned from Italy, my lawyer claimed the divorce compensation. Alexander had apparently spent a lot of money on his mistress, leaving almost no savings. The mistress, being the president's daughter, was scolded and disowned by her father. So, they couldn't rely on her parents' money and had to go into debt. Finding a new job was difficult for Alexander, as his recent scandal was widely known. Though he always claimed to be an elite banker, I heard he often slacked off at work, affecting his performance. For the company, it was a perfect excuse to fire him. Alexander and his mistress are now living off part-time jobs. With her being pregnant, she won't be able to work soon. I doubt Alexander can support 3 people on his own. Well, they deserve to struggle as far as I'm concerned. Meanwhile, my business is thriving. And I received a larger loan from the bank where Alexander worked. My salary has increased, and I'm planning to buy my own house. Building my own home has been a dream for a long time. And I'm looking forward to it. I may have lost a husband, but I have friends and supportive business partners. I'm in an incredibly fortunate situation and am ready to continue working hard.